and are out there for you to look at.
You mentioned that yesterday.
Yes, correct.
Okay, very good.
Item 2 is, I know we had a very robust discussion yesterday about the medical debt relief. We are looking at that. So it's something that we're going to look at the conclusion of these budget hearings on Thursday, go back and look and see, what options are available. We've reached out to Mitch Lindstrom, who's our main guidehouse consultant. He's provided us some information on some of the medical debt relief projects that Guidehouse has been involved with around the country. So it is something that we are looking at. So we can revisit that next week sometime. So excellent. That's what I'll say about that. I know there's been some discussion about potentially funding that program out of other areas other than ARPA. And one of the things that's been mentioned is a rainy day fund. The city of Akron does not have a rainy day fund. I know I've said that a few times. We have a general fund balance that we've been able to grow over the last couple of years, thanks in large part to some of the CARES Act money that we received. But we do not have an independent rainy day fund, and therefore that is not an option for funding really any items because it does not exist. So I just want council to be aware that the city of Akron does not have a rainy day fund.
You've been clear on that before, but thank you for the reminder.
What is it called? What is it called again? The overage.
So we have it's the balance in our general fund.
Okay.
Okay. And then finally, I'd like to say a little bit about, I know there's been some discussion and some questions about Section 56. That is a piece of language that is in our budget ordinance, which basically allows the administration to contract for professional services under the authority of the budget ordinance. So one thing I want to be very clear about is this is not something that was recently added into this document. When this topic first came up, it's something that I was aware had been in there as long as I can remember. So I went back to the 1994 budget ordinance, and that language is in there. We were able to find, Mike was able to find upstairs, this is the 1980 budget ordinance, and that language is in there. So that language has been in there for at least 43 years, if not longer. So this is nothing new. It's language that allows the administration to procure the services it needs to run the daily operations of the city. So I know there's been some questions about that. That's what Section 56 is. It's something that's been in this budget ordinance for at least 4 decades.
Ms. Holland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fricker, maybe we can just put all this to rest right now. Is it true that item 56 or section 56, if approved, actually abrogates or overrides section 95 of the charter, in that expenditures under item 56 then do not require council approval for expenditures over $50,000?
The ordinance authorizes the expenditures, and that's why it was put in there 40-some years ago, if not longer. Again, I don't know exactly when it was put in, but yes, it allows the administration to procure those services.
Okay, I appreciate that. And again, for the record, and you and I have been in communication, but I just want my colleagues to be aware that I have requested a record of expenditures under this item for the past 2 years, specifying who the contractors are and what the services were for the past 2 years, and any that are forecast for the coming year.
So an update on that. So I did provide the first year. So in your budget documents, there is a document. Let me see exactly what it's called. In the other documents folder, it's called COA Supplier Contract 2022 budget ordinance 81-2022. That contains the complete list of contracts that were authorized under last year's appropriation ordinance.
So I would ask somebody to isolate that document and send it to all council, please.
It is in your folder under every council member has that. It is in the SharePoint site under the other documents folder.
And the title again?
So it's called COA Supplier Contract 2022 Budget Ordinance 81-2022.
Mr. Chair, if I may add to that, I've been going into that SharePoint to see if anything additional has been added and adding it to our agenda portal. So you'll also see that if you're on our website under our agenda portal, you'll see an agenda for today's budget hearings, and you'll be able to see those. That particular one is under other documents.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. And yeah, as far, I mean, I've not been down here 40 years, but we've always had that, and we were having discussion today. You know, when did that, it's just always been there.
Correct. Yeah, it predates any of us in this room, let's put it that way.
Right. Okay, very good. Okay, let's commence. I think we have mayor's office first, is that correct?
Yeah, I will definitely take the opportunity to go first.
Thank you.
Gert Wilms, Chief of Staff for Mayor Horgan. I'd definitely like to thank the finance team. Mike, Steve, thank you to you and your team for all the work you've done in preparing the documents and getting us all on track with this endeavor. Again, the mayor's office, we oversee everything, but technically not responsible for a lot of the day-to-day activities. So we definitely want to thank all of the employees for the citizens of Akron that make Akron a success every day. The work they do, the essential services they provide, very much appreciated, and I want to take this opportunity to very publicly acknowledge that and thank them all. We did provide our goals, objectives. Not much has changed. We definitely want to follow through with some of the things we've already initiated, making the ARPA investments with what we currently have, continue to address racism as a public health crisis. I applaud council for that resolution years ago.
I'm sorry.
Sir?
If I can interrupt. I just want to be able to follow the document, and I'm struggling with all these documents. So from the shared folder, we're looking at department goals and objectives.
I wasn't really sticking to a script, so.
Okay. Sorry to take you off script.
But I will just open it up with questions.
Okay.
Mr. Fricker, you might be able to guide a bit, because there's like 5 or 6 directories. And
Yeah.
Correct. So we basically have one directory for the budget numbers themselves, and that's listed under department budgets.
Yeah.
Then we have a directory for department goals and objectives, and that's the one that we are continuing to update as we receive those goals and objective documents from each department. We're putting them in that folder. Then we have the legislation that just has a copy of the ordinance and the UCR documents that go with the ordinance and the resolution. And then we have the other documents folder, and that's where I put the document I just spoke about.
Well, she's going to be under department goals and objectives, and then
Correct.
talks, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And those are kind of there. I don't know that you necessarily need to, follow along. That those are there for council to look at their leisure.
we'll be focusing more on the
Right,
department
yeah.
budget folder.
Right.
Sorry.
Yes, Ms. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if I'm going out of order or not, but at what point can I ask questions about the items that show up on this record of expenditures under 56?
So that would be after the presentation of each department, then you could ask about the expenditures within that
You'll
department.
let me
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Thanks.
And again, I don't have pages, I don't want to, I feel like we need to get our legs under us for 1 second. We are fully staffed in the mayor's office currently. The only open position we have is a college intern, and we are in conversations with potentially getting someone in for the summer to take that position. So we have a great staff. Again, the DEI director is under us, communications team is under us, Deputy Mayor Somerville is under the mayor's office, Deputy Chief of Staff Tamika Rose, Labor Relations is ultimately under this same topic. I will just note for a change this year, due to issue 10, historically Phil Young, the police auditor, was always under the mayor's office. That has been put into its own category this year and its own budget. So that is a pretty big change from what has been provided to this group over the years. And I'm here for any questions.
Between 2023 and 2022, showing a $310,000 increase in budget. Have I seen that right?
Okay, so you're looking at page 3?
Looking at page 3, yes, upper
Okay.
left-hand corner.
Yeah, so that's a combination of, we have the one additional, the DEI cabinet position
Okay.
with Tammy Tucker that we added. And then we also added some additional education funds because both the communications team and the DEI cabinet member want to do some educational type things. So we did add, so you'll notice that service contracts number goes up, as well as the training, education, and travel amount goes up. There's also funds in there for a video for the state of the city that's in this budget. So those are the main reasons for the increases in that area.
Video,
For the state of the city event.
outside of that additional $300 expenditure, anything that you really is glaring that you'd want to bring to our attention?
No, I think Slum's
Okay.
talked about the police auditor will show up on these documents. You'll see a $0 amount, and that is because that operation will now exist under its own department. So it's
Okay.
no longer under the mayor's office. That's the one major area of the mayor's office budget that changed.
Okay, that's the first year for this, correct? Okay.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Again, I'd like to thank council for the opportunity to present and all city staff for making this possible. It's very greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Okay, we'll open up for questions or comments, and we have, oh, you know what? For the record, I probably need to read in who all we have with us. We have Councilwoman Mosley, Councilman Lombardo, myself, Freeman, Fusco, and then online it looks like we have Ms. Somerville, Ms. Amobian, and Councilwoman Baylor, Councilwoman Connor, and then and Councilwoman Holland. So, sorry I did not read that in. Okay, so questions or comments regarding administration's budget here? Yes, Ms. Holland?
As expected, I have tons of questions about item 56. Specifically, I think it's the second or third page, there is a contract for services in the amount of what appears to be $62,000 to Plasquelic. Can I get some understanding of what that is?
That would be under us. When we get to that point, I'm happy to.
Okay, we're still not there. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and yes, that's a under integrated development, but I'm happy to talk about it.
Is that the case for all things under item 56?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I'm just trying to understand what each of these contracts under item 56 in the document you identified earlier under other documents. I'm trying to understand what these are and why they don't come in through ordinary legislative process.
because they are professional service contracts that are authorized under the budget ordinance as they have been for 40-plus years, and when the legislation is created, or when the contract is created, the ordinance number used to create that contract is the budget appropriation ordinance.
For that budget year?
Correct.
Okay, so we do it this way because we've always done it this way?
Yes.
Okay. Not exactly my question, but got it. What I'm asking is why? Why do we do it this way?
So this allows the administration the flexibility to bring in the contractual services that it needs to operate the city.
Okay, can we go through these items and gain an understanding of how each of these were necessary to be done without council involvement?
I mean, we could do that at our leisure. I don't know that this is the proper venue to go through those line by line when we're trying to do the presentation of the documents, but if there's questions about certain contracts, we can address those.
Well, I don't want to derail or disturb your presentation, but if not now, when? And I think that the public should be able to hear and understand this too. So when would you propose we do
Okay,
it?
do we have, I mean, is there a question about a specific contract, or are we going through every single one to talk about what it is? I believe there's 173 contracts on that list.
The Plasquella contract, let's start there. I mean,
Okay, go ahead.
That is a contract, and I think, if I'm looking at it correctly, the original amount was $62,000, that was entered into 2020, is that, I mean, I'm trying to get to the right, was that, you said that was page 3? Okay. All right, this is under LED, okay. This is tiny writing.
yeah, it's really small, I agree.
Yeah, so I guess it started in early '21. They are hired for consulting and JED-related purposes.
I'm sorry, say again?
JED-related purposes? JED,
JED.
J-E-D-D, Joint Economic Development District.
And they being former mayor.
It's his
Plasquella.
company, yes. He would be the person that is actually consulting with us, yes.
Okay, and I apologize, I'm struggling with the page numbers here, but I think it's page 4 of 10. We have something for Ohio Edison at the top of the page.
So I'll look at that. I believe that was on a specific project, so it was some electrical work that we paid them to do on one of our street projects, I believe.
Thank you. And it's not necessarily lined up by each individual division, but to the left of each one is a category. So I think that can try to help determine which division or department, or, if you notice that one is under engineering, there are a number under engineering, so.
Makes sense, thank you.
Yeah.
I assigned those categories, so that wasn't part of our system, but I wanted to kind of go through and group those as I pulled this report. So I gave each contract a category.
Got it. So I see here's where I start to get confused. On page 6 of 10, in the left-hand column, we have an item that's labeled legal, right next to the words University of Akron. Now, I'm reasonably sure that we're not using the University of Akron for outside legal counsel.
Correct. So that is the expungement program. So if you look over in the the 6th column, there's a description of each contract. And sometimes it's very brief, but that is, and I think council's well aware of this program, that's our expungement clinic that we fund every year.
And who is Robert Stephen White?
Is Bob White, maybe? Is that, what is that under?
This is page 7 of 10, OID.
Yeah, that's the architect that was hired to help with the Copley Road Resource Center in design for the building that we own out there to create the resource center.
The what? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. The Copley Road Resource Center. It's been in our, I think it's been in our capital budget for some time.
Okay, I'm just asking you what this contract
Yeah,
is for.
the Copley Road, the architectural design services for Copley Road Resource Center.
And without delving into anything, obviously, that is covered by the attorney-client privilege or attorney work product, I see multiple entries for legal and laying out multiple contracts for services with, among others, Voorhees Sater, Retzel and Andrus, all well-known members of the Akron legal community and beyond. So again, not wanting to delve into what specifically their advice or work was for us. Who is the decision maker on this particular move to engage outside counsel beyond or in addition to the legal work that's performed by the City of Akron's Law Department?
So that would be the law director.
Okay, exclusively?
Ms. Holland, if you would please refer, because we're off of, we've kind of strayed away from our general outline. What document are you referring to?
I am in the supporting document for agenda item, other documents.
Okay.
Contracts 2022 budget. This is the document that Mr. Fricker kindly pointed out
Okay.
earlier. It's available on Agenda to Go. It was also separately sent to us. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
These are the, as I understand them, and please stop me if I'm wrong so that we're all literally on the same page. These are expenditures that came under this item 56
Okay.
that's been going on for 40-plus years. And I'm just trying to get my arms around, how much contracting goes on outside the approval process of City Council.
So you, excuse me, you're wanting first to see just an itemization of everything that we've done under $50,000, or that the mayor has done under $50,000.
No, these are actually items which can exceed $50,000.
Or it exceeds $50,000, okay.
And every time we approve item 56 in our budget, we give permission for the council process, council approval to be
Okay.
sidestepped.
I misunderstood you. I thought you
Yeah.
were asking for all the items that were under $50,000.
Oh, heavens, no, we'd be
Okay.
here till Russian Easter. No, no,
Okay.
no. Is there somebody who can respond to just a general question, why it's necessary to engage private law firms for service contracts?
Perhaps when each division
Yes.
provides their budget, might be the opportunity to ask those questions, department by department. On the left of that, the categories all indicate under which division they are under, so perhaps when the law department is here, the law director could be in the best position to answer that.
Works for me.
I'm sorry, Chair, I'll repeat that. I suggested that each one of these categories are under a very specific department. Maybe when the department head is here to present, the department head could answer any of the questions with regards to those contracts.
Because they're spread across departments.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I think that makes perfect sense to get the subject matter expert to respond to what these various things are. I think the important thing that I am trying to get my finger on is what the utility is of this item 56, and whether it's a wise, appropriate way of handling large expenditures, given Section 95 of our Akron City Charter. That's it, full stop. Thanks.
Okay, so we can, as those different departments come in and those items are there, you can, would it be fine to bring them up then?
I guess.
Okay, okay, good. All right, we can run that way. Very good. Anything else any other question? Mr. Fusco, did you have your hand up? Okay, very good. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, and appreciate all that you do, and hope that 2023 is a good year for all of us. We have labor relations next?
I believe the labor relations was one.
Yeah, that's under the mayor's office, so
Okay,
we're going to move on to the Department of Integrated Development.
Hello?
and you said police auditor will do,
Under the Citizen Oversight Board later today.
Yeah, that is today. It's after,
Okay.
I think, it's actually after integrated development.
okay, very good.
You ready for me?
Yes, I am.
All right. Sean Bowman, Deputy Mayor for Integrated Development, City of Akron. I don't think I can as eloquently thank everybody that's been involved in this process as Gert did, but I would like to echo those remarks, as well as I have a tremendous team that I work with every day. We are broken into a number of divisions. What I planned on doing, and I'm willing to, change it on the fly, but, we have generally 4 cabinet members involved in OID. of Sam DeShazer, who just sat to my left, Katie Breck, Jason Segedy, and myself. So just each of us talk a little bit about the divisions that, directly report up to us. And I don't know if you want to wait until everybody's done talking to ask questions, or, fire away, but whatever you want.
Fire away. If there's a burning desire that can't wait, we'll let you know.
The first is our biggest division. That would be Development Engineering, made up of Michelle DeFiore. And bragging a little bit about what she's done over the last year, everything you've seen with respect to Lock 3 and Summit Lake, and the community centers that we're doing wouldn't be possible without her hard work. And that's not to say she doesn't have a full plate of other things to do as well. But Michelle is our Development Engineering division, just had an amazing 2022. Also, directly reporting to me is a Development Division. I think the biggest thing Development Division did over the year was hire David Messner as the Development Manager. If you remember, a year ago, I was reporting on everything that, it was my job to report on everything for development. Fortunately, I have someone that's more than capable of doing that right now. I think a couple of the bigger things, other than hiring David, that they did last year would be, I think the acquisition of that IBH property out in Coventry is going to be something that we're all going to be doing victory laps over for years to come, and as well as the amount of, and this involves in development, but also while we're integrated, also, long-range planning, but the housing developments that we've done over the last year of all shapes and sizes, whether market rate, affordable, in and about all over the city, I think has been something to be very excited about. David has, is he right there? He is behind us. He has been able to replenish. When he came on, I think we were down to 1.5 employees in development. One of the big things was to restaff that. He did not have an administrative assistant. He had 1 full-time person and shared 1 person. I think we're up to 4.5 or maybe 5 now. But he's been able to get that staff back up to about where it was a few years back. So those are the 2, I guess. Since Sam's right to my left, I'm going to let him talk about BRE.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Sam DeShazer, and as a part of what BRE is, it's Business Retention and Expansion. And we always tell you this because of the fact that in the traditional sense, it's always been known as the economic development component of the integrated development effort. So as our job, we've gone in and tried to have this long conversation. It's a conversation with each and every one of our business owners throughout this community. So the approach has been to have these conversations ongoing. So what you'll find in our goals is that we actually have had more than 700 conversations, but 330 of those BREs have been visits to company owners, CEOs, presidents of companies, and people who are in the C-suite. We want to actually have a relationship with them. And so we're doing that for a couple of reasons, because this is what we specialize in. One is 70% of all of the growth that we have from business come from people who are in our community already. And they're looking for ways to go to the next level, to increase employment, to use technology, to get technical assistance and those kinds of things that help them to grow and to prosper. Akron is about the 78th largest municipal gross domestic product group in the nation. So as we're going to keep pace, we're constantly talking with our groups on technical assistance. We're constantly talking about being able to use technology to go to the next level. We're constantly talking about workforce development. More than ever before, we have some real pressures on workforce. So people in our department, including Brad and myself, we tend to be on the front line of the workforce development question. We've done that over time. What you're seeing here in this budget is a reforecast for 2023 that also includes what happened in the last 3 years. We went through the recession. We didn't miss a beat, even when the city was at home. So we want to answer your questions on that. We want to be able to tell you that we try to reutilize land, buildings. We try to take companies who are looking for opportunities to go other places and do their business, to do it here in Akron. We try to invite people from other marketplaces that are looking for new markets to do business here. I don't want to be too verbose about this, but we have lots of efforts that go on with other partners. So we are a TRICA with the Greater Akron Chamber, with Summit County. We all have a role to play, and so we come to the table and come out of our towers at least once a week, and we go over just about every aspect in decision-making for new investment in this town. So that I don't get too long-winded on this, I'll answer any questions that you have. Brad is prepared to answer questions. Brad is also our chief building officer for the city. People forget that, so he hears every fire engine that goes by, and he's always checking his clock to see whether or not he's on the clock to investigate another building, and to look for an adaptive reuse for those that are out there in the marketplace that need somewhere, or businesses who need somewhere to go.
Thank you. Ms. Holland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. DeShazer. It's always a pleasure to see you. You said some magic words to me and to many of my constituents, and that is repurposing existing buildings. And Mr. Beckert and I have had a few conversations about this over time, but I'd like to drill into that a little bit. Sure. There are a number of organizations within the city of Akron and beyond, candidly, who feel strongly that we have not given this enough of our energy, enough of our attention or intention. One of the items that springs to mind is the now notorious plan to turn the Akron Beacon Journal into a parking lot. Could you explain for the public who might be watching exactly how OID figures into the concept of repurposing existing buildings? What are you guys doing, and how can interested community members leverage this? And what is the literal investment in this effort at this point?
Right, you bring up a good one when you talk about the adaptive reuse of the Akron Beacon Journal building. Just like all buildings, it's got three different parts if you divide a building up. One is you got an engineered product part. You got the mechanical part, which is the way that it is set up and distribution of services throughout the building. And then there is the part of the building that is the architectural design. Most of the buildings in Akron that were designed during the heyday of Akron's zenith as the tire capital of the world would set it back from 1965 to 1945. So if you go back in those eras. And so all of those need to have some real viewpoint and look-see. One of the contracts that you talked about earlier today was the employment of an architectural service that could look to see what are the adaptive reuses that we can do for those buildings. How can we bring a 2023 technology to a building that was built in 1945, but upgrade the building so that it can meet the demands of today? And so that's what we're trying to concentrate on. They're not making much more land here in Akron. We're 62.4 square miles. But what we're trying to do is to reutilize each and every one of them. There are some buildings, there are some that have seen their useful purpose, and for the businesses of today, it's been virtually impossible to find people who could utilize those particular buildings based on how they were designed and the function that they were designed to include during the lifetime. But that's one of the things that we are doing, not just us, we're reaching outside of ourselves to other custom engineering firms. We're looking at architectural groups, people who have some far-reaching thought processes bigger than us, and the best practices of cities around the country. Because we don't go it alone. We're depending on others to tell us how did they do it, and how can we adaptively reuse buildings for the next purpose if the building has another lifetime that it's going to provide. Brad, you are the building officer. Maybe you have some comments on that. I'm not sure. I don't want to put you on the spot, but you see it every day.
Yeah, the Beacon Journal's it's an interesting building. Actually, the developer that owns it now,
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but could you bring that microphone closer to your mouth? It's hard for the people online to hear unless you're speaking right
That's
into
okay.
it. Thanks so much.
Sorry about that. But I did take the developer through the building originally, and then he decided to purchase the building. He didn't know what he was going to do with it at the time, had no idea, no intention. He did find that it was unique in some areas. And the one thing with these buildings that I look at commercially, and we get some of the largest developers in the United States to go through these, the IRGs, the ICPs, and they own buildings all over. They have to be reused. Obviously, office space is at not a premium, but a glut, I'll say right now. And to turn something into a residential space, you have to bring it up to a certain standard. And a lot of these, unfortunately, old rubber tire buildings or ink buildings where they produce paper, it's very expensive to do that, very expensive. Now, can there be other reuses? Sure. I mean, maybe some type of office space, but we have to find the right developer and the right, I'll say, recipe financially for them to do it. And, we help as much as we can in those areas. We point them to the different organizations around the city. They can get historic tax credits from the state. They can get new job tax credits if they bring in manufacturing or jobs. So we do the best that we can to reuse these buildings, but in some instances, they're just, as Sam said, they've lived their useful life, I'll put it that way.
There's one more that, some of them we own, some of them we don't. Most of them we don't. There's one that's the crown jewel of the North Hill. It's the St. Thomas Hospital that's sitting up there. And I think that's going to be a challenge for us in the future, is to figure out how to adaptive reuse that type of facility. So since 1913, it's been there. 1913, over 100 years ago. How do you repurpose that to be something? So that's just an example of the long-range planning that it takes in order to make these work.
Super helpful, and I'm not sure if this process lends itself to this, but if you could, and, you know, I guess if it's helpful, reference the breakout in the other documents that we've discussed today. Give an idea to what percentage of your operations budget goes to things like adaptive reuse of existing buildings. Can you ballpark that? Help us understand?
Well, yeah, I'll say 25 to 40% of my salary is actually paid by public service now. And that's really where a lot of it ends up. A lot of the adaptive reuse and taking a look at the building and helping the developers go through that. So.
Okay. And in terms of these service contracts, are there more than the one that you mentioned, Mr. DeShazer, in the item 56 contracts? You mentioned there had been
I was using that as an example, but oftentimes they're all special. So if something comes up where we need to adaptively reuse a facility, so it could be an ongoing contract with someone that we already have, and sometimes there's a special thing that will come in because of us looking at that as a place that's going to create some new vitality for the city. We don't want to get in line, so to speak, but we want to get someone who has that expertise, who can come right away, do the analysis, and let us know whether or not this is going to be good for us or not.
Okay, and I want to make sure I'm understanding. So the idea is we need to act now.
Most of the time, that is true.
Yes.
If you're moving at the speed of business, they're giving you a very short window because they have other communities that are also looking to get that investment, and we don't want to be left out. So
Okay. So is it fair to say, and believe me, I have a point to all this, is it fair to say that item 56 allows you then to act quickly without the need to come into city council and roll it out and get a vote, get approval on the service contract?
It's true. Part of what engineering has is engineering has a group of what they call supplemental services contracts with different engineering and architectural firms.
Yeah,
And really, I use those with a different code because those are already encumbered for the year. So if I need somebody to do a quick study, I can just use one of those. And that's really the best avenue for us, as Sam indicated, at the speed of business to get this done quickly for a developer.
So those aren't item 56, those are in a separate category
That's
of
correct.
budgeting.
They're part of a contractual process that engineering under public service goes through every year, and they renew those contracts.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you, that's helpful, Mr. Becker. Thanks.
Just, Mr.
Well, I
Ryan,
just wasn't sure, again, I'm not seeing where, like, this being part of the operating budget discussion. I mean,
I'm
we're all
just trying to
dedicated
understand how we
to
reach
adaptive
these numbers.
Right, I mean, but whether or not the Beacon Journal building is gonna,
This isn't about the Beacon Journal
Okay.
building, this is about understanding how you're spending your money.
okay, I don't know of any contracts that, I think,
I apologize, maybe I misunderstood, but Mr. DeShazer mentioned a contract that came on this roster of item 56.
he brought up the Bob White contract because you had asked about it to me
He
before.
didn't mention it by name, but
that
is
was
that
it.
the one we're talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
Yeah. that was-
Okay, and I'm simply asking, why do it this way? Why not bring it to city council where everybody can understand what it's for and why we need it? That's all. And not challenging you, Mr. DeShazer, just trying to understand how we get to these numbers, how we're distributing the money. That's it, full stop. Thanks.
either Sean or Steve, page 10, debt service, you're showing $1 million this year. Explain that.
So I do have a couple placeholder debt service items within the JED budgets that I put there if the income tax revenues don't come in as expected. So that's, I believe I have two of them within the JED budget.
Okay, and then just a couple lines up above that, there again, service contracts, you've shown last year 2.7, this year 574. I'm not sure how you anticipate that number.
Okay, so last year, the 2.7, That is where we covered our contribution to the 47 North Main Street project. That's the old ABIA space on Main Street that Children's Hospital occupied. So that was our contribution. That's what that expenditure was last year.
Okay. So again, the debt services, if the income tax revenues do not come in
Correct. So
the way
if
we-
I have, it just gives me some extra capacity if the income taxes in the CIP fund aren't sufficient, then I have some room here to pay debt service.
Okay, does that happen in any other department budgets that we're looking at, or just?
No, it's what's in the JED fund, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? It's a lot of numbers here, and I want to, if some of my questions seem like, oh, Freeman, you should have known that. There's just some things that I still have questions about, so.
If there's nothing else specific for Sam and Brad, I could bring Katie up to talk about recreation and Lock 3.
Mr. Chair, there's a hand raised online.
Oh,
Okay, Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is I'm looking under the Office of Integrated Development, and I see it has 2 employees. Last year it was 170, this year it's 293,000. Is that Mr. DeSasia, Mr. Becker? Because when I look under labor relations, it has 1 employee, and it has 252,000. I'm trying to figure that out.
So let me address the labor relations. So what we are showing are full-time employees. Labor relations, we also still have Randy Briggs that is working some hours, so there is some part-time labor costs there, but it's not showing up under the count because I'm only showing full-time employees for the count because that part-time number goes up and down so much throughout the year that you would never be getting a good count on that.
So, if I understand you, Mr. Fricker, you're saying under labor relations, the $252,000 is for part-time?
No, it's for,
It has budgeted 1, under employees, it has budgeted 1.
correct. So there's 1 full-time employee and 1 part-time employee.
And it comes to $252,000.
Yeah, so that's a cabinet member plus Randy Briggs, who formerly was a cabinet member.
Okay, but then when we get to the Office of Integrated Development, it has 2 employees. Are those both full-time?
Tell me which page you're looking at.
Just a second, sir, I'll scroll down. It's page 6.
Correct, so that is the Director of Integrated Development and the Deputy.
It's Katie Breck and myself, the Deputy Mayor for Integrated Development and the Director for Strategic Development for the city.
And both of you are full-time, correct?
Correct, that's the 2.
Okay, well, I'd like to go back and look at, looks like maybe we may want to look at if we got a full-time and a part-time and we're almost spending as much as 2 full-time employees, we may want to look at that a little deeper, but we could go for it. I just wanted for my clarification, that looks like we could do better with a full-time and a part-time if we're almost paying that much for 2 full-time employees. I'd like for us to take a deeper dive in that a little bit later, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Ms. Holland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I have kind of a related, same neck of the woods kind of question. I am looking at the 2023 Budget Plan Executive Summary, and specifically, I'm looking at overtime by year, 2020 to 2023. And I understand that from the title, this is page 8 of this kind of overview of our whole budget. I do understand that this is for a 3-year period, but I'm a little concerned / confused. If I just understood what was shared, we're talking about overtime exempt employees in OID, correct? Or do we have some overtime eligible? Because what I'm looking at here, I'm looking at this bar graph on the bottom, general fund overtime by department, and I'm actually seeing some overtime for integrated development. So I'm wondering if I've misunderstood something here.
Okay, so every department potentially has, all employees with the exception of managers are eligible for overtime. So
I understand,
there are some
but
integrated
didn't I
development
just hear that we've
employees that
got-
are eligible for overtime.
What Councilman Neal was talking about was the administration division of OID. That's two people. OID is Parks and Rec, Development, Lot 3, BRE, and Planning, and those departments potentially have overtime.
So you have some non-exempt employees that are counted for this purpose? Yeah?
Yeah, I would think so, yeah.
Okay. Any idea how many?
Off the top of my head, no, I do not.
I'm sorry, what was the
How
question?
much overtime, how many people in OID are getting overtime?
I mean, we could pull that number, I don't know.
I wouldn't think it'd be very
specifically,
hard.
yeah. I would say the majority of them are eligible for overtime, as there's, I don't know, how many managers within OID, probably 10.
So we all understand, right, what exempt and non-exempt employees are, right? Okay, I'm interested in the non-exempt employees. I'm trying to understand where the overtime is coming from for your department.
You talking by project or by?
I'm talking about what appears as part of this budget.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so we will pull a list of all of the
Yeah.
overtime by division within OID.
Right, quick question, Steve or Mike, maybe you can answer. Based off of what Councilman Neal related to the labor relations, I know that's full-time and then part-time. What's the salary breakdown of the part-time? I understand the full-time, I believe that's probably Frank Williams, maybe, is that? So what's the part-time pay if you break it up?
Yes, so Randy's rate is $74.12 an hour. I believe he's working 28 hours a week approximately.
So it's not salary, it's per hour?
He's part-time. Yeah. Yeah, so he retired as a cabinet member, and he's coming back and assisting Frank with some of the duties within labor relations.
So what does that break down per year? I hear you saying it's $74 an hour, but it's part-time. So we're talking about for the year. How much is he making for the year? I don't want to, I'm trying to pull what Frank is making out of it. He's cabinet, he's full-time. I'm trying to figure out how much is Randy Briggs making as a part-time employee for the city?
Yes, so So Randy is budgeted at $92,502 a year. Whether or not he actually will earn that much if he works that much, I don't know,
the
but
budget
that's
amount.
what he is in at.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I do not see any questions remotely.
Mr. Chair, Councilman Neal has his hand raised. I know it's a little hard to see. I
Yeah.
I think we see your logo, Mr.
Shop
Neal.
logo. Yes, Mr. Neal.
My apologies, I'll move my.
There you go.
There you go, there you go.
Thank you.
I just, I remember when we received budgets in the past, we used to get, if it was a part-time employee, it'd be like 1.5. And we even used to get budgeted where, because I mean, you know, many times it would be in the budget, positions that you wanted to fill, and you would put that line item in the budget. And it was helpful for us because if you did not fill that position, you know, we'd be able to say, okay, well, what happened to those dollars? Where did they go? So that council could have the ability to reallocate them. Now it's very difficult to see what's going on because it just says salaries, it's all lumped there. I'd love for us to take a look at, especially since we're going into a period where we're going to have a new administration, so that this is not thought of as being punitive, but just good governance. What is the right size, even cabinet and positions for a city our size, so that we can be budgeted well? But I remember when I first got on council, we used to get a breakdown of everyone in that department, and if there was a budget for a position that was hoped to be filled that year. But when we start asking questions, what happened to those dollars? If that position wasn't filled, we moved to this type of format where we can't delineate, you know, get a full understanding of what's in the department. So my ask is just, if we can get a breakdown of if any of these within salaries have line items in there for positions that we want to fill, but we know that we have to put them in the budget so that the money's there to fill them, so that at the end of the year, if we don't fill those positions, we can understand that those dollars, if they were redirected to the general fund and actually how those dollars were expensed. It makes it easier for us to have a better understanding of the overall budget. I'd appreciate that.
So that document does exist. It's out in your directory. There is an employee count document that is out in the root directory of the share file that I sent. So it is the first page has a summary by department, and then the subsequent pages have the breakdown by position that shows the 22 budget, the current count, and the 23 budget count by job title.
Thank you, sir. Where can I find that again, please?
So it's in the root directory of the share file site. So under council presentation files, it's right there. It's 2023 budget position count by job title.
Thank you.
Thank you. What do we have next?
Yes, we also have Katie Brack, who oversees recreation planning in Lock 3. Jason Segedy, who is our Director of Planning and Urban Development. If you have questions about, you know, their budgets, and those are all included under OID.
Very good. Ms. Brack?
Say anything?
Sure. So Katie Brack from OID. I just want to say it is an honor, and I appreciate the opportunity to present on the Division of Public Life, which is keenly focused on making Akron an attractive place for visitors and residents alike. Establishing public life is one of the greatest challenges resulting from OID's creation, but it is the foundational element of our department and provides the greatest opportunities for strategic collaborations for downtown and neighborhood parks, recreation, and events. Downtown operation, which includes the management of LAC 3 Park and the Downtown Operations Group, has accomplished so much in 2022 thanks to our recently appointed in the last year LAC 3 Park Manager, Chris Griffith. He's done an exceptional job leading the LAC 3 team. And under his leadership, you'll see the accomplishments from the past year, but LAC 3 Park welcomed an estimated 228,000 people throughout the summer this past year. And with the upcoming renovation of LAC 3, Chris and his team, along with our colleagues in the service department, prepared the site under the State Street Bridge for Winter Blast. And despite the challenge of launching our winter activities from the new location, LAC 3 Park saw an increase of 15% in gross revenues generated from food and beverages, gate rental, and all of our rental offerings. In 2022, downtown Akron became the premier location for winter fun, but this would not have happened without collaboration and teamwork between LAC 3 and Recreation. There was no greater example of this collaboration than the first annual Welcome Santa Parade and Holiday Tree Lighting Ceremony, which was held on November 25th of this past year. We estimate that over 4,000 people came downtown for the illuminated parade, which was a wonderful night to kick off the season. And many of you know, the city of Akron, our mayor, Dan Horrigan, named the March Employees of the Month the combined team of LAC 3 and Recreation staff who made this event happen and deserve our highest praise. Bringing thousands of people into downtown doesn't just happen. It's a steady drumbeat of marketing, social media, on-camera interviews, all orchestrated by Jeannie Jordan and Greg Nyberg. I would also like to thank our Recreation Manager, Brittany Schmokel, Chris Griffith, Lori Chenevy, and the rest of our staff for doing such an amazing job. In 2023, we will break ground on the new LAC 3 Park, so plans are in the works for an alternate stage to host our summer concerts on the Bowery lot behind the Akron Civic Theater. We will work alongside the Akron Civic Commons communications team to effectively communicate with neighborhood residents and businesses our construction schedule and minimize any interferences. We will also work creatively this year with local small businesses and entrepreneurs and plan on hosting budding restaurateurs in our LAC 3 kitchen, as well as coordinating days for contractors to support local downtown businesses at their lunch break when they're on site. Now moving on to Recreation, just want to give you some of the highlights. Under the direction of Brittany Schmokel, Recreation and Parks celebrated many accomplishments in 2022, including the launch of a new website and expanding programming to give children and young adults more opportunities to play sports through our open gyms and late-night basketball league. Brittany and our Recreation team is actively engaged in the planning process for renovating and rebuilding our community centers and pools, of which we'll begin construction on Ed Davis, with Perkins Pool already under construction and scheduled to open this summer. Recreation worked with Kaboom to build the new playground at Joy Park, and will continue this partnership in 2023 to expand opportunities for play in other parts of the city. We also safely and successfully hosted summer camps at all 11 of our community centers and hosted summer concerts in all 10 wards of the city. In addition to these many accomplishments, Recreation continues to be very community-focused in their responses to the pressing needs of the public. During times of inclement weather, Recreation successfully deployed warming centers during frigid temperatures and cooling centers to help residents beat the heat. Additionally, it was Recreation and Parks who launched the Youth Empowerment Scholarship Fund, also known as the YES Fund, to support children in our community with scholarships for Akron recreation programming. The YES Fund is supported by tips collected at LAC 3, another example of collaboration within our division. And we also raise money through our annual golf outing, which is scheduled for August 25th at Good Park. I want to take this opportunity to thank Jeff Morton for spearheading this initiative for our children. 2023 will be the year of new enhanced amenities for Akron residents that will make our city an attractive place to live and visit. I am proud of the many accomplishments of our division and appreciate the hard work of our dedicated team of professionals who make it happen every day. Thank you.
Thank you. First question. Third line, non-discretionary accounts, utilities. 100-some thousand last year, and Again, something I probably should know.
So
but-
one of the things that we do from time to time, depending on how, the revenues come in during the year, is we will move some of the utilities from the general fund to the TIF fund in order to free up cash within the general fund to make the impact on the general fund as low as we can get it. So that's one of the things that we did last year. So those utilities for the recreation centers are hitting under the general fund, and then we move those costs to the TIF fund to ease the burden on the general fund a little bit.
Okay. We done that in the past?
We have.
Okay. Mr. Fusco?
Just real quick and brief, and this is related to the budget. Let's stick to budget. All I want to say is that as someone who's worked closely with recreation over the years, I'm not asking for how much exact overtime. I suspect I have an idea, but I just want to say that the Recreation Bureau, they're the ones in our city that says yes to everything. Pretty much, because whenever you ask them to do something, they do it. And sometimes that requires overtime. And the attitude of that bureau is just fantastic, and they get it done. And so I just want to say thank you for everything y'all do.
Thank you. Ms. Holland?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And let me just tag on that and say that as a longtime representative of workers, could not agree more that we have to give support and credit to the folks who get stuff done. At the same time, as fiduciaries, we are duty-bound to reduce overtime any chance we can. And I think that we can probably all agree here that there's no such thing as an emergency festival. So I'm going to gently, respectfully suggest that there's overtime need, and then there's overtime need. So I think it's important that we perform our responsibility and look and ask carefully exactly how are we spending this money. I'm not doing my job if I don't do that. So no offense, guys, okay? Just doing my job here. Along those lines, I'm wondering if anybody from the OID team can tell me who is Connie's Boy Productions?
Yes, after we transferred, when I took over OID, we contracted with our former Integrated Development Manager, Mr. Hardy, to assist with that transition. That contract did not last the full duration of it. It's no longer in existence.
Okay, so the number is inaccurate, or?
No, it was accurate, I think, at the time, but it's no longer a contract. It's been terminated.
It's been terminated?
Yep.
Okay. Is the $35,000 number what was spent or what was budgeted?
I think that was what the contract was for, but I don't know exactly what was spent on the contract.
Okay.
Does it say that on the sheet?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, it looks like we spent 26 on that one.
Okay, thank you.
I have the sense that probably a lot of the contracts, I know we do a lot of things rather than hiring a new employee or bringing someone on to run something, we'll say, hey, let's kind of, sub this out, and so we don't have to absorb a new employee, so I'd probably...
Well, is that what this was?
I mean, it was really supplement. I mean, it was to, we did not have a long period of time for me to slowly get into the position.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, understood. What do we have next here?
Mr. Chair, Councilman Neal has his hand raised.
I'm sorry. I see your hand, but I don't see your face, Russ.
Yeah.
There we go.
I thought that'd make it easier. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is Lot 3 under the administration still, or is it under the Recreation Department?
So it is under OID, so it is contained within the department that we're discussing right now.
Most of the employees, though, that work there are for Park and Recreation. So are their hours charged to Park and Recreation, or are they charged to cost of integrated development?
No, so there are separate staffing costs for Lock 3 and so to the extent those employees are working at Lock 3, those costs are charged to Lock 3.
Okay, and I know I brought this up in council. I heard about the tip jar. I shared that many of the employees that worked were unaware of the tip jar going to the Yes Fund because, they were expecting the tips to be divided at the end of the year. I'd like to suggest as we go into the next year that it not be listed as a tip jar, but it be listed as a whatever foundation jar. And if we can put, since they're in the service industry, a tip jar out there for them, if that's doable. I think we used to have a tip jar for those employees. But I would like to know, Mr. Roman, you said you were going to get for me exactly how much was raised for that fund and who benefited from it, so we can get an idea of how that benefited young people from across the ward. If we could get that still, please.
Yes, Councilman Neal, we do, just so everyone's aware, have signage posted on the jars so people are aware that those monies are being collected for the Yes Fund. In addition, the people who are working down at Lock 3 are not being paid a tipped wage, and so it would be improper for them to collect a tip. And we have language that was drafted by our law department, so everyone has to acknowledge that we do not tip employees down at Lock 3. We do have a current balance of our Yes Fund, and right now we are in the process of getting the word out because we have summer camp registration that is opening up on April 1st, and so would appreciate your assistance in getting the word out about the availability of the Yes Fund. I do not have the total right now on top of my head, but I can get that information to you and show you exactly how those monies were spread across all the different wards in the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Malik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One question specifically on page 13 is the JED BRE fund. The very last line item, other expenses, it looks like there's around $140,000 spent the last 2 years, but there's about $500,000 budgeted. I was just wondering sort of what that is being used for and the gap there.
That is the business expansion grant. We've talked about that in the past. Council passed legislation authorizing $500,000 a year for business expansion retention grants. We just have not, the years we've budgeted $500,000, I guess we only spent $144 last year. There's not a difference in the budgeted amount, it's, you know.
So we anticipate ramping that up this year?
Well, I would love to do $500,000 this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Malik, what page you're referring to?
Page 13.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Volman.
All right, let's move straight ahead.
And we have Jason Segedy in planning.
All right, good afternoon, Councilman Freeman, members of council. I'll be brief. I oversee 3 divisions in the planning department. I'll go through them briefly. I did want to start thanking all the managers that I'm going to mention. I think the manager level is one of the most important levels of administration at the city. They're taking direction from the cabinet members and the mayor, and they're making it happen with the day-to-day staff. So they have an incredibly important job. I know a lot of you interact with them quite frequently as well. Long-range planning is managed by Helen Tomick and Jim Ashley, who's our investments program administrator. Want to thank them both for their hard work. You're probably most familiar with their work from the capital budget. That's the biggest product that they produce every year. We do appreciate your partnership with putting that large document for nearly last year, $370 million together. Long-range planning also prepares a consolidated plan which outlines how we use our federal funds from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And long-range planning oversees a lot of our community plans, neighborhood plans, some of which you're familiar with, like the Merriman Valley plan, but there are many others that they work on. Zoning division is overseen by Mike Antonucci, who's the manager. I think you may be the only people that see Mike almost as much as I do. You know, you see Mike all the time for public hearings. He does a great job. Zoning, you're all familiar, I think, with certainly with what zoning is, so I won't belabor that. But we are working, you know, zoning also oversees and manages the Planning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the Urban Design and Historic Preservation Commission. In addition, a lot of the day-to-day work of just enforcing and monitoring the zoning code, Mike and his team are always working hard to try to reform and improve the existing code, and we appreciate your work with us on that too. And then finally, I oversee the AMATS division. You may not know the managers as well, so they can either stand or raise their hand, whatever they prefer, but AMATS is overseen by Curtis Baker, who's the director of that, and then Matthew Stewart, who Matt isn't so new anymore, but he is the planning administrator. They're both of the M-level employees, the managers of that division. AMATS, I think, as a lot of you know, is a little different than a lot of the other divisions. It is a standalone regional organization, but it's housed within the city of Akron. It serves as the federally designated metropolitan planning organization for Greater Akron. As the MPO, or Metropolitan Planning Organization, they're responsible for developing regional transportation plan, a transportation improvement program, which is essentially their capital budget for federal funding expenditures on transportation in Summit Portage County and a portion of Wayne County. And then finally, as far as their staff operating budget goes, it's a bit different as well. It's supported primarily with federal funds. It's 80% federal funds, 10% state funds from the Ohio Department of Transportation, and then 10% local funds, which are collected as dues from all the local governments in Summit and Portage County and that little portion of Wayne County that they serve. So I think in a nutshell, those are the three divisions that I oversee, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Fusco?
Thank you. On page, I think it's 22, there seemed to be an adjustment there. And I don't know if they just got moved to a different fund, but 4.5 employees to 0?
Correct. So we moved, so overall within the OID department, they're actually going down half an employee.
Okay.
We're not funding one position, and then we moved Summer Hall from 50% to the mayor's office, 50% to OID, to 100% to OID. So that's a net drop of half an employee. But we did we moved some positions around within the cost centers within OID, and that's what you see, some of the numbers in terms of the full-time employees. But overall, within OID, it was a net loss of half an employee.
Thank you.
With that, on page 20, went from 4 to like 7.25. Is that some of the folks that were?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So just, and I'll not be around, but just for future, like long-range planning, NSP, nothing budgeted there except for service contracts.
Right. So the idea was, you know, we used to charge most of the staff within OID that was charged to the CDBG grant was charged to a particular code, and that code was also used for a lot of the larger contracts that we do within CDBG. So I wanted to have the labor cost contained within one cost center, and then have the contract costs within its own cost center.
Okay.
So that was the reason for the change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Malik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think relatedly to Mr. Fusco's question, on page 26, I just had questions around the salary and wages. There were 8 budgeted employees in 2022 and 2 in 2023, but the expenses for salaries and wages seem pretty similar, like 14 million to 13 million. Can you kind of explain what's being paid for?
So that's the ARPA fund.
Sure.
That's the ARPA. So the large salary figures represent and we talked about this yesterday, that is where we moved expense from the general fund over to the ARPA fund. So the vast majority of that is safety time that was moved from the general fund to the ARPA fund. We also, last year, we funded 8 positions within ARPA, including Danico Buckley-Knight's position. We also funded some positions within water and within housing. Those were never filled. We've been doing that, so that the water positions we've actually been doing with a contractor, and the housing positions we did not fill either. So this year we're only funding 2 full-time positions, Danico's position, and then we're going to fund 1 finance position that will be responsible for the monitoring of the grants, so that we don't have to use Guidehouse for that function. So we're going to try to save some money by doing that grant compliance monitoring in-house versus using a contractor.
Okay, so almost all of this 13 million is kind of pass-through money effectively.
Correct.
For police and fire?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Where are the Guidehouse numbers in this budget here?
They will be down in the service contracts portion. Yeah.
Okay. Don't see anyone on screen. Okay, let's proceed.
That was us, so if there are other questions.
That's us. Okay, excellent.
That is us. So if there are other questions, we are here.
Yeah, I don't know how you tell everybody in your department, thank you, but thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Holland.
I just want to make sure I understand something. Under service contracts, we're showing for 2022, 5 million and some change. For 2023, 7,580,050. And I just want to make sure I understand that this is separate and apart from OID contracts that show up that we discussed previously, correct? Is this all Guidehouse?
No, this wouldn't be just Guidehouse. This would be the programs as a whole, including violence prevention, any of the programs that we're currently funding through ARPA as a whole. The CDC programs, I believe, are going through service contracts lines as well.
So this includes those that are listed on that item 56 roster, or no?
I don't believe any of the ARPA contracts would be, I shouldn't say that.
Well, I think
there might be some. But we have, so I think it might be helpful if you look at, so let me find the page for the ARPA.
And this is not a gotcha, this is not a trick question. I just want to point out that I saw some entries on, I guess what we're going to call the other / item 56 listing that I believe referenced Guidehouse and youth violence prevention. So I guess I'm trying to help you here. We don't want these expenditures to show up, or planned expenditures to show up twice, right?
These will not be showing up twice.
Yeah, so the document that you're looking at that has the list of all the contracts on it is independent of all of these costs. It's just a different look at these contracts. So it's not, these are not in addition to what you're seeing in these other sets of numbers, if that makes sense.
It does not.
This is a different, this is a more detailed look at those contracts.
Okay, so in this graphic image that we're looking at, page 26 of the master document, we are looking at all contracts undertaken by OID, whether or not they were approved by Akron City Council. Accurate so far?
on page 26, so these are just the contracts associated with the ARPA program. Not all contracts within the city, just the ARPA ones, yeah.
Okay, is
So
there
that's
another?
one, this is one specific cost center that we're looking at.
Right.
This
Okay.
is the ARPA grant.
So is there another OID service contract line entry that I should look at in addition to this cost center? Again, not a gotcha, I'm just trying to
Okay.
understand
Yeah,
the
I mean,
universe of
there's
OID
all
contracts.
of the cost centers that we've gone through, so all of the pages between, let me go back. The OID cost centers start on page 7, I guess, no? 6. And go through yeah, page 27, I believe. And many of those cost centers have contractual items on them.
Right, and I'm just trying to, again, I'm just trying to understand what the universe of OID contracts are, expenditures, okay?
Okay.
For the purpose of understanding secondarily, how many of these came through Akron City Council, how many did not? How many can we
So
reasonably
some of them
expect
did,
next time?
and the ones that did not are listed on the others, what we're calling this Section 56 document, I guess.
Okay, okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Malik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Somewhat relatedly, so back to the ARPA grant fund on page 26, that service contract number, 7.6 million, 7.5 million, 58, that includes the amount that we're planning to spend on Guidehouse in 2023, is that correct?
Yes, that is
And
correct.
what would that estimated amount be?
So I think it's roughly $2 million is the admin number, which could include Guidehouse, Voorhees, that's pretty much it, between the two.
Okay, do we know the Guidehouse specific amount? I don't want to hold things up, but we can come back to it.
Helpful, so the breakdown of page 26 was also included within
The last page of the budget
the
overview?
last page of the budget overview, correct.
Okay. So,
So project administration, that budget amount is $1,542,110.
okay,
I'm sorry, $1,005,000, yeah, because we have some labor in there too.
okay. So the amount for Guidehouse and Voorhees is roughly 1.5?
That's our current estimate, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. I think that wraps us up here, and we go to Mr. Tucker now, is that correct?
Well, so we do have, in between there, we have the Citizens Police Oversight Board.
Okay, so
I
we're
don't
going to do
know.
that tonight. I thought somebody
And
at
I
the
can
office.
walk us through, what's there.
Okay. I thought, my confusion, I thought somebody had said to me at the offset.
Yeah, I mentioned to you, Phil Young was ill, but we did the budget, so
Okay.
we are here to present on that.
Okay, very good.
Unless, I did give him a Zoom option, I don't know if he was feeling well enough, but it doesn't look like it, but we're here. Steve, Mike, and I can only answer questions.
Right. I don't know that there's, as the board is really not operated yet, we did establish a budget for the board with 3 employees. So as we said, the 2 existing employees from the police auditor's office will come over to this budget, as well as the deputy independent police auditor hire will be a part of this budget. That position is budgeted as of June 1st. So if it is in place before that, we could certainly add funds to cover that, but I budgeted that position for 7 months this year. We also put budget out for new PCs for the board and for the 3 employees, and a training budget of approximately $50,000.
Okay. The employees would be,
It is the auditor, deputy auditor, and then 1 administrative
And then 1
staff.
administrative assistant.
full-time
correct, yeah.
administration?
Full-time.
Okay, very good. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Wilms, that administrative role has already been filled, right? The administrative assistant role?
Yes, yes.
Cody,
That position was
Cody
filled last
Merriman
year.
started,
Like last summer?
yeah, a while ago,
Yeah.
Yep. So
Yeah.
the only unfilled position is the deputy at this point.
Yeah. And I just want to express appreciation. I know it was a long process to get that administrative role filled, and so I appreciate the efforts that were done to that end.
Looking for any questions or comments? Okay, thank you. And, yeah, this is kind of a first go for us for this, and we'll see. Hoping that 3 people will be able to satisfy, the needs there, and this is a new department for us, so
Thank you.
thank you. All right.
All right, and with that, I think we'll go to the Department of Public Safety. We do have Clarence Tucker here. We have our Police and Fire Division, so I'll let Chief Tucker kind of go through, his remarks regarding the Safety Department, and then we'll move on to Police and Fire.
Okay. I keep wanting to call you Chief Tucker. Forgive me if I do that, all right?
No problem.
Welcome.
Well, good afternoon. First, I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and our members here of City Council for taking the time to see us and help us out with our budget here. And we are proudly presenting this budget, looking to continue to provide the services for public safety to our citizens. We have, in general, had an increase in call, not just this year, but pretty much every year for the last 10 or 12 years. So we look at our budget, and then we still have to provide the services to our citizens that they demand. And we do that within a budget that stays pretty much even across the board each year. So with that, we have for our Safety Police Communications, Captain Laughlin here that can get into some details if that's what you'd like. If we can move to the next part of this.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to kind of hit on some of the accomplishments we had in 2022. We fielded over 354,000 calls in 2022. And with a shortened staff, we're about 20% short. We usually lose about 20% within the first year when we hire, at an attrition in 5 years of about 40 to 41%. So we have to put a lot of effort and emphasis on our recruiting and hiring, which we are continuing to evolve and get better in that way. And also working on retention. We're spending 2023 focusing a little bit more on retention. We're moving into the new dispatch center with the, used to be called the Council of Governments, but they've changed the name, and they'll be paying at a higher rate with other benefits, and we need to work hard to retain our employees and show them that Akron's a great place to work, and we support them. So that's a focus for 2023 for us. Also in 2022, we had several of our technicians earn awards at the Gold Star Awards at the annual Association of Public Safety Communications event. That was at Colorado in 2022, so we're proud of the great work that they do. And along the lines of what Deputy Mayor Tucker said, we have 911 wireless funds tied to our answer rates. We have to answer 95% of our calls within 20 seconds. And again, with that short staffing, with our numbers being down 20%, it can be challenging, but our team does accept the overtime. If we don't reach minimums, we have to mandate people. Tell someone who would normally be going home, you have to stay for 4 more hours, and we don't like to do that. But regularly we have our team step up, accept the overtime to help out their fellow co-workers, and I'm proud of that, and I do recognize that when I see it on the activity reports for them. And again, that wireless fund is a county-wide fund, so we have to pull our weight county-wide, just like everybody else. It's a significant amount of money that's used for our budget for a variety of purposes. We did hire some technicians in 2022, but again, we're still short. Right now, we're about 11 short, and that number will increase to 14 as of April 3rd, when we have 3 of our technicians that will start the police academy. You know, I tell all of them, I'm not going to hold you back. If that's what your desire is, I'm going to support that 100%. We'll just have to work a little bit harder to fill our needs within the dispatch center. Another thing we want to do in 2023 is become even more of a professional agency. We want to certify technicians for the communications training officers to have a formalized training program to incentivize that. And also become an accredited center of excellence. That's through the International Academy of Emergency Dispatch. There's some things we have to do with that, and we're working towards that. Again, just one more thing that we're doing to highlight Akron as a top public safety answering point in the state of Ohio and in our area. And with that, I'll take any questions.
All right. Looking for, yes, Ms. Holland?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. So I'm probably going to get a reputation through this process, and can't help it. I'm a longtime labor and employment lawyer, so I'm really interested in overtime, and would like both, if you can provide it, a little breakdown of where overtime fits into the labor cost, both real and projected. Also like to get an idea, and largely for the public, to understand how overtime happens. And I do appreciate what you just mentioned, and I think we can all agree here and beyond that, you know, that you guys do such hard work, and that you are never looking at your watch in the middle of an emergency to say, oh, I'm so sorry, it's time for me to go. So all of that said, if you could develop this idea around what are we spending on overtime?
I don't have the exact numbers. Mr. Fricker might have
So
that,
what
but-
we will do is provide a breakdown of the overtime, how it's budgeted and how it was spent over the last couple of years.
And perhaps this gentleman could help the world understand how we get there.
Well, like I mentioned, we currently have 53 technicians of our budgeted 64. We do have, like in the police department, minimum staffings. We have to answer the calls from our community. We have to answer the calls within a certain time frame, and a large chunk of money is tied to those answer rates. In addition, we need to make sure, as you say, coming from labor, that our personnel need time off. They have families, their mothers, their fathers, they have children, they have people they have to take care of. We need to make sure that we provide for time off, and contractually we're required to provide a certain amount of time off. So it's that balance of providing the time off, answering the calls, meeting our minimum staffing requirements in order to answer the 354,000 calls a year. Recently read an article in Austin where they had some street racing going on, and a council person called 911, and I think it took 20 minutes for that call to get answered. Some of them took even longer. That's their staffing shortage issues that they have in Austin, Texas. We do have short staffing, but our team works really hard to make sure we maintain those minimum staffing levels, to provide that high level of service that our community expects and that we expect from them.
Also, keep in mind that, you know, when you have people that, you know, call off sick or are hurt or, you know, are required to go and spend time in the military, those, those absences have to be covered one way or another, and typically it's by overtime.
Yeah, and along those lines also, as I mentioned, people who have families, we have a number of people who are on intermittent FMLA or continuous FMLA for child care or taking care of an ill parent or some other loved one. So it's a balancing act to make sure people are able to provide for their families in accordance with FMLA, but also maintain that staffing. And they say we support our team, and I think that's why they are responsive to us, make sure we maintain our minimum staffing levels with limiting the number of mandates that we have. So proud of that, and we'll keep working that way to make sure our staff feels appreciated and supported.
Questions? Mr. Malik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here in front of us and for your service to the city. So relatedly, what is the total sworn staffing authorized by this budget for police? In 2022 and 2023?
So give me a second, I do have that number out here.
Because I know it's in a few different places on a few different pages.
So my police number is, I believe it's 471, but give me a second.
In what you've given us, it says budgeted employees 467.5.
Yeah, safety communications, we're budgeted for 64 frontline technicians, some other supervisors, but it's a total budgeted of 72 people within safety communications.
Now, when you say sworn, you mean police officers, correct? Okay, yeah.
That 72 number is not a part, because later on down you have 467 listed.
Yes, my total uniformed, if you go to page 15 of the employment count file, which is in the root directory. So it's 471, that's our total uniformed budget number for police for 2023.
And what was it in 22?
It was 470.
Okay. And at any given day, we are, 20, 30 people
so I had
below
it,
that?
at the time I took this, which was a couple weeks ago, we were at 442.
Okay.
So we're hiring a class of 38 that will come on board in April.
And not to be too simplistic, but there's a fairly strong correlation between number of staff and overtime, right? And so, if we do not have enough staff, we have to rely heavily on overtime, right? So, how do we make the decision that it should be 471 versus 480 versus 500?
We try to balance that number. So keep in mind, we're also limited by the amount of people that, and I'll let Captain McCosey talk about this a little bit more too, but we're limited by the number of people that we can train in a particular class. So this is going to be a big class for the fact that we're doing 38 officers. It's going to be a big class for them.
Solid.
Thank you. So I just want to make sure I understood this right. So we're looking at budgeted for uniformed officers for this current budget process, 471.
471, correct.
Okay. Last year, we held at 470.
Correct.
We have currently 422.
442.
442. Okay, that's a big difference. Because I was going to ask you, what happened? We've got some missing people here, missing uniforms. So 442, and we anticipate 38. Right. And that brings us to the full
471.
Okay.
Now, as Captain McCosey will probably talk about, if we get to 471, it would probably be for a brief moment because we're,
okay.
As I said yesterday, people come and go all the time. We
Got
try to
it.
get that number so we're balanced
People coming
the
in,
dollars that
people
we
going out.
have with the ability to how many we can effectively put through a particular class And it's, as I said, it's kind of
No,
a balancing act.
Totally fair, I understand.
So,
And-
Councilmember, I think I'm going to address some of that in my comments as well. So
Excellent.
maybe between the three of us, Steve, Audrey, and
Good.
myself, will be able to give.
Let me give you my one final, and then I'm going to be quiet and listen. So my colleague, Councilman Malik, actually started down this path, and I'm interested in this too. When we are talking about racking up overtime, technical term there, racking up. When we're talking about this, we're not just talking about time and a half in terms of earnings. We're talking about an increased contribution to pension. And I want to make sure that we all understand this. So it's not just the increased hourly compensation. There's an increased contribution to pension, right? So this actually may or may not make a difference when we're looking at which is more expensive, hiring more people or incurring overtime. So I just wanted to make sure we saw that the same way. Is that accurate? Okay. All right, gonna be quiet now. Hi, Chief.
Any other questions or comments? I don't know how we say thank you, but it would be huge. Thanks for all that you're doing, and just.
I do want to thank you all for your time and your support. Like I say, talk to a lot of you regularly, and I do appreciate the support. It's not just an open forum. You say that, you say it in private, and I do appreciate that, and I do convey that to my team also. So thank you very much.
I'm going to break my own rule here for a moment. Everybody on night crew have tasers now? Yeah. Right.
Not in the radio room, so.
I understand that, yeah, I understand that. Well, I know just a few years back, we had guys out at night, and they didn't have tasers. I thought we had taken care of that. I just thought, well, I've got them in front of me, I'm going to ask, so thank you. Thank you for everything.
All right, thank you. And now I'm going to have Chief Marlette come up and join us for the police department.
Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Madam President, Mr. Chair, and members of council. Unfortunately, I don't have the retention that some of my colleagues do, so I'm going to read off my notes.
Is your mic on?
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam President, Mr. Chair, and members of council. I am not as, I don't retain things as well as I used to, so I am going to go to my notes quite a bit. And I promise if I stick to the script, I'll get done a whole lot quicker. But today what I would like to do is kind of go over some of our successes in 2022, our performance and our goals for 2023, all of which are directly linked to the monies allocated for the police department in order to provide public safety services to the public. To say 2022 was a challenging year for the city of Akron, the Akron community, and the Akron Police Department is an understatement. This past year, and going to some of the data, overall calls for service dropped from approximately 147,000 to 141,000 calls for service. Unfortunately, the city witnessed an increase in violent crime, but not all categories of violent crime increased. For example, felonious assaults dropped by close to 7%. Unfortunately, we did see an uptick in the categories of murder, robbery, and rape. On the other hand, all major categories of property crimes dropped in 2022. In the end, Akron witnessed an overall reduction of total crime by about 8%. Our numbers here in Akron are reflective to the numbers that we're seeing around the country. Having said that, violent crime continues to plague the United States, and Akron certainly is not immune from the crisis. Reduction of violent crime continues to be a priority for the Akron Police Department. We implement many methods to address violent crime. One example included Akron officers engaging in conducting 48 gun details resulting in 63 arrests. In total, this past year, 946 guns were recovered in 2022. 28 of those cases were prosecuted federally. And what this translates into is stiffer sentences and taking violent people off the streets of Akron for a longer period of time. In 2022, your officers responded to an average of about 386 calls per day. Some good news is that our use of force numbers continue to be exceptionally low. In 2021, our officers used force 202 times, while in 2022, that number was about 207. When laid over the total number of contacts with the public, the incidence rate is 0.14%, or 1 in every 681 calls.
You repeat that?
Yes, sir. So in 2021, our officers used force 202 times, while in 2022, that number was 207. When laid over the total number of contacts with the public, the incidence rate is 0.14%, or 1 in every 681 calls. That number has been consistent over the last 5 years, in the 5 years that I went back. It is important to note that the majority of the use of force that our officers use, almost 62%, involved open hand tactics and no weapon or tool was ever used. Unfortunately, in 2022, officers were involved in 4 shootings. Some have been cleared by the grand jury, others are pending. Certainly, the June 27 shooting of Jalen Walker created many challenges for every person impacted by that shooting. This case will be presented to the grand jury in the coming weeks, and due to this fact, I'm unable to add further comments or answer questions related to that shooting. Moving on, and on a good note, complaints against our officers continue to be very, very low. In 2022, complaints were down by 13%, with a total 45 complaints made against APD employees. Again, laying that over the 141,000 contacts, this translates into an incidence rate of 0.03%. In other words, for every 3,131 interactions with the public, we will generate 1 complaint. Of the 45 complaints received in 2022, 4 allegations were substantiated and employees were disciplined in order to modify and correct their behavior. There were 7 allegations with some sort of racial bias component. All of those allegations were investigated and were discovered to be unfounded. Certainly, body camera footage assisted investigators to determine the validity of these complaints or these claims. Conversely, employees of the Akron Police Department received 136 commendations in 2022. The Crimes Against Persons Unit continues to work hard to solve homicide cases, with some investigations taking years. The current 5-year solve rate is at 65%. It's worth noting that the national average is approximately 54%. 2 recent examples of the tenacity and dedication of your Akron police employees include the arrest of 61-year-old Philip Mendoza Jr. for the 2020 killing and murder of 1-year-old Tyree Halsell. It took 3 years to bring Mr. Mendoza to justice, but through the exceptional work of our detectives, he was arrested. Another example of APD employees never giving up is the June 2020 murder of 43-year-old Brian Powers. Within this last week, our detectives arrested 48-year-old Bobby Bell for the murder of Mr. Powers. No matter how long it takes, your police department will continue to seek justice for all victims of violent crime, as well as for their families. The APD has witnessed a steady increase in requests for body-worn camera footage. In 2022, the number of requests increased by 55%, and that trend is expected to continue as we continue to implement in-car camera systems. The department has been working diligently on a multi-year project to return unclaimed funds to members of the public. In 2022, those efforts paid off, and we returned over $100,000 in unclaimed funds to members of the public. Council member, you were talking about staffing a little while ago, and it was a major challenge in 2022. This past year, 33 officers retired or resigned from the department, while 28 new officers were added. At the end of 2022, the police department stood at 442 sworn personnel with a budgeted strength of, and Steve, I had 470, so you give me one extra body, at 471. That number can increase as we add positions that are awarded through grants. The 442 number does not mean we had 442 bodies to deploy. As was discussed earlier, at any given time, we have employees who are out on injury leave, maternity or paternity leave, administrative leave, military leave, FEMLA, etc. It is important to note that as of January 1st, an additional 135 officers or employees are currently eligible for retirement. For obvious reasons, employee retention will continue to be a priority. We're also looking at our non-sworn staff. This has not revealed itself to be as major of an issue as our sworn staff, but again, our goal is to retain the talent that we have, because every time somebody walks out the door with 5 years, 10 years, we're losing more than just the salary, we're losing all of that experience. When examining our fiscal management performance in 2022, one thing certainly stands out, and that is the amount of money we spent on overtime. As you can see from the budget executive summary, this past year we exceeded our allocated monies for overtime. There are two principal reasons or factors that contributed to this overage. The first being staffing. Throughout 2022, the APD struggled with maintaining sufficient staffing levels to provide quality services to the public. The overtime monies were expended on staffing, on this staffing were primarily used to achieve minimum staffing for our patrol division. That's not added additional bodies, that's just to get us up to the minimum number that it takes to safely and effectively provide responses to 911 calls and to proactively patrol our city. The second contributing factor to our overtime budget overage were events that occurred following the June 27th shooting of Jaylen Walker. In the days and weeks following the shooting, the city witnessed civil unrest and in some cases riots. Where property and businesses were damaged, members of the public threatened and fire set. In the midst of these challenging events, legitimate and law-abiding members of the public engaged in their constitutionally protected right to protest. In every case, our officers strive to provide a safe environment to allow people to protest. Where crimes occurred, violators were arrested. It is important to note that throughout this period, not a single life was lost. Not a single serious injury event occurred as a result of the protests and riots. We did lose one young girl during this time period, Journey Tolbert, but it was not, and her tragic death was not related to the protests or the riots. And we're working hard to identify the suspects on that. I believe the results of no deaths, no injuries, serious injuries, are a result of the professionalism of our APD officers. There are always lessons to be learned, and we will learn from our performance and experiences during 2022. Unfortunately, as we move into 2023, I fear we will experience the same budgetary stresses on our overtime expenditures for the same reasons I just discussed. Moving on to some of the things we accomplished to achieve our stated goals in 2022, which are to reduce violent crime, to address recruiting, hiring, and retention, and community engagement. In our efforts to reduce violent crime, in addition to some of the work I already discussed, in 2022, we continued to use technology to prevent and solve crimes while at the same time using it as a force multiplier. A prime example of this is the implementation of the flock camera program. To date, we have deployed 145 cameras in the cities. Cameras are strategically placed throughout the city. The flock platform is connected to police departments in our region and across this country. Deployment began in September of 2022, and shortly thereafter, officers followed up on a flock hit for a missing person. A 77-year-old female from Illinois, I believe, was endangered and suffered from dementia. She was from Illinois and had gone to a dog show in Pennsylvania. She went missing and was entered into the national database. Akron Police Department officers located her and her vehicle at Twin Oaks and Portage Path. She was checked out at the local hospital and reunited with her family. There are many other examples I can give you about the flock camera success, but we'll save those stories for another opportunity, another time. Some other notable efforts to reduce violent crime in the city included identifying and arresting the individuals who commit violent crime. In May 2022, Sean Allen was convicted of 2 counts of murder for the double homicide of Horace Lee and 1-year-old Azaria Tucker, who both were killed in July of 2020. He was sentenced to 60 years to life in prison. In February 2022, after an 8-month nationwide search for the suspect who callously took the life of 18-year-old Nakia Crawford in June 2020, Adaris Black was arrested by the Northern Ohio Violent Fugitive Task Force in Atlanta, Georgia. Black was charged with and convicted of the murder of Nakia Crawford. In November of 2022, he was sentenced to 15 years to life. In 2022, the Summit County Prosecutor's Office had a 100% conviction rate of those charged with murder in Akron. A factor to their success is directly linked to the work of Akron police employees. From the talent of our call takers and dispatchers to get accurate information into the hands of responding officers, to the first officers who arrive on scene, who secure the crime scene, identify witnesses, victims, and on occasion suspects, to the exceptional work of our crime scene technicians and the professionalism as they gather evidence and help build the case, to the hard-working cadre of detectives assigned to the Detective Bureau. The work of each person connected with the case directly impacts the successful prosecution of the guilty and, as important, the exoneration of the innocent. Recruiting, hiring, and retention was also something we focused on. Our recruitment campaign attracted 738 applicants. This group of applicants were more diverse than other prior application periods. In September, we graduated a class of 21 new officers, and we hired a class of 7 fast-track officers. These are officers who already have certification, so we're able to get them through the academy and on the streets quicker. Community engagement is something else we focused on. It was a priority in 2022 and continues to be today. We cannot be successful as a police department without a close relationship with those whom we serve. In 2022, the Community Relations Unit delivered or supported 261 programs, including Safety Town, Stranger Danger, Prom Promise, Gun Safety, Senior Safety, Bicycle Safety, presentations at ward meetings and community groups, and other general safety programs. Zone commanders frequently come to the ward meetings and are at your beck and call, as am I. As we move into 2023, and if you will indulge me just for a couple of minutes more, I promise I'm bringing this to a close. I would like to let you know what our 2023 goals and objectives are. They pretty much mirror 2022. We will continue to work hard to reduce violent crime. We will continue to integrate technology to improve response to incidents and improve investigative outcomes. We will utilize funds from the OCJS Violence Reduction Grant to analyze data and deploy resources to the areas hardest hit by violent crime. We will partner with the community through ward meetings and other engagement events to improve information sharing and deliver crime prevention programming. Your invitations to us to attend your ward meetings are greatly, greatly appreciated. And the relationship that we have with this council assists us in carrying out our duties. Recruiting, hiring, and retention is our top priority. If we don't have enough people to serve, then we're not serving them to the best of our abilities. So this year, so far, we've extended 36 conditional, I thought it was 36, but Steve, again, correct me, it may be 38. More conditional job offers than we have in recent history to fill the next basic police academy, which is set to be seated in the next few weeks. The class appears to be more diverse than ever before. The most recent recruitment campaign has wrapped up with testing to be held at the end of March. We will continue to work with HR to develop incentive programs to help with recruiting and encouraging city employees to participate in the process. We will review our current hiring process to identify ways to streamline the process and reduce the time involved in background investigations while always focusing on hiring the most talented individuals to serve the public. After reaching an agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police, we moved all patrol units and other units in the department to 10-hour shifts. There is a one-year trial period to ensure that this is the best schedule for our employees and the community. Community engagement continues to be a priority for this department. We have reassigned a captain to oversee community relations and the community engagement team. Additionally, we added a supervisor to the community engagement team to assist them. We will utilize grant funds to install dash cameras in patrol vehicles for greater transparency of police operations and to provide detailed documentation of investigations to improve criminal outcomes. We will expand community engagement team events to meet neighborhood needs. And again, the partnership with the City Council, I think, is imperative. Employee health and wellness. If we don't have healthy employees, then again, we're not serving the community to the best of our abilities. So we will be working with Human Resources to develop support structures for more programming. We're currently collaborating with Human Resources and outside partners to establish a fully functional peer support team. And finally, we will be working hard to fully implement the Akron Police Department's Tomorrow's program. I don't think I've come to council yet to explain the program. In a nutshell, the program is a future-focused vision for the Akron Police Department. It encourages the agency to look to the past for successes, failures, and missed opportunities while using those experiences to inform decision makers on how to respond to issues of today while always looking to the future to improve service performance. There are 3 pillars to the Tomorrow's program, which speak directly to our stated goals for 2023. They are community engagement, process improvement, employee wellness development, and recognition. Each pillar contains activities and actions to achieve the intent of the pillar. For example, under community engagement pillar, we will continue to develop and expand our advisory councils to the chief of police. We will conduct town hall forums to educate the community on what we do, when we do it, how we do it, why we do it, and under what circumstances do we do it. We will also produce video blogs to communicate information out and educate public. It is our goal to demonstrate there is nothing hidden behind the curtain. The more we can educate the community about their police department and the more we can learn from the community, the more we are able to break down barriers and work in true partnership to reduce crime, reduce the fear of crime, and enhance the quality of life for everyone who calls Akron home. On behalf of the members of your police department, I want to thank each of you for your support through the budget process. And Captain McCosy and I stand ready to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak.
All right, thank you very, very much. And we could probably stay here till 7 o'clock tonight talking about everything. We're trying to stay to the numbers. So if our questions are not program related as much, you understand we're trying to stay to numbers here. So, but thank you for that. And I'll come first to Ms. Holland, and then Ms. Mosley, and then to Mr. Malik.
And then me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks so much for being here, everybody. Chief, it's always so good to see you, and I appreciate all you're doing. So, first of all, I just want to tell you how much I love this idea of the town halls. How wonderful. The community engagement piece, in my view, in my limited experience, cannot be underestimated for impact. So I guess it won't surprise you when I say I have a few more questions around overtime.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's my understanding that recently there was an adjustment made to shift lengths that we're doing it differently now.
Yes.
And I guess I'm interested in understanding whether that is having or is expected to have an impact on overtime use. And then the second thing I wanted to ask you about is whether there's a look being taken at specifics on how to reduce overtime use. One of the things that I'm aware of is For example, the practice of sending one versus multiple officers to court. You know, are we looking at things like this? And I'll be quiet now and just hear what you experts have to say.
So we're always looking, thank you, council member, for the question. We're always looking at that overtime budget. The hope and one of the benefits of going to 10-hour shifts were to increase the size of the platoons, which would result in the end for less overtime. One of the other benefits is to give our officers more days off so they can recover and recharge. That is proving itself to be very beneficial thus far. Because of our staffing issues, we still see positions going unfilled on the shifts that require us to hire overtime in order to meet minimum staffing levels. Again, retention is something that we're focusing in on. I don't want to lose another single officer. We're competing with other agencies, smaller agencies with salaries and benefits and all that, and they're seeing that. And in terms of your last question, which was court, we rely on the prosecutors to make that determination who needs to be there for court. And if an officer gets subpoenaed because they have information that is valuable and is relevant for the case, we have to go. So I'm not sure if there's, I saw you pointing over there, and I felt Gert on my shoulder, so Gert.
Listen, I'm a prosecutor in recovery. As time progressed in the prosecutor's office, actually body-worn camera gave us a lot of information that didn't require us to notify officers like we may have had to in the past. I can tell you, when we were in the prosecutor's office, we tried to be very mindful of sleep schedules and all this fun stuff. Pretty much the only time we were notifying officers to be in court was for sworn testimony. It's a bench trial, it's a suppression hearing, it's actually a jury trial. And at that point, unfortunately, in this day and age, all the officers get notified. And we can tell by body-worn camera who's all there, who needs to come in. So it's limited, it's a lot better than it was. I can't believe Craig Morgan changed that much in 13 months, but I gotta tell you, just with our own improvement of technology, body-worn camera and all that, it limits when we need to bring officers in and why we bring them in.
Okay, very good. Ms. Mosley?
Chief or Mike or Steve, maybe one of you can answer the question about, I'm looking on page 46 under the police issue 4 funding, and when we look at the 2023 budget, it drops down significantly. My question around this is there any possibility to have funding budgeted for officers to have CIT training? Because I know there's funding that comes from the ADM board, I get that, but just making it more available for all the officers instead of for just a certain amount, maybe all of them, and if we could put a budget line item in there for that, I think it would be very important for us to move forward dealing with the mental health in our community.
CIT training is so important. It is, as are other training programs that we're looking at. Captain McCosey is over the training bureau, so I'll let him respond to that question.
Good afternoon. The problem with the CIT training is not so much the money. We're able to send our officers, there's no cost for the training. That program is funded by outside sources. The issue for us really is the slots. There are only so many programs that they are able to put on each year. That's a partnership between ADM and UCOM and a lot of other agencies across Summit County and in the area. Certainly we have always had slots, 1 or 2 at a time, and we continue to do those. And we continue to work with them to find out if we can bring them here to do a whole class, because we certainly could put a whole class of folks through at this point. We've had a lot of gray-haired folks that moved to Detective Bureau that had that training, and we all appreciated it. We want to bring that to the younger folks. So we do have a little bit of that training that's part of the basic academy, and we bring in a portion of it in service each year as part of the mental health response portion of our training. But it's really not money. Certainly, if it was, we'd find a way anyway. Really, it's about making the slots and working with our partners on that.
Captain McCosey doesn't know this yet, so surprise. One of the things that we will be doing this year is looking at the curriculum and what's being taught. I think we have an exceptional academy. And again, I've been here 18 months, and I base that on, my travels throughout the country, and I think our trainers are top-notch. The training curriculum is good, but there's always room for improvement and addition. So we will be looking at that this year.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Malik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief. I will try to only ask 4 or 5 questions. First of all, we're sticking to the numbers, but there's a lot of amazing information in your report. I wonder whether a annual report can be released publicly.
Absolutely, we're working on that. Actually, this year we're working on an annual report.
Great, thank you. The second is when we talk about staffing, I know we worry about officers leaving to laterally transfer to other departments. Do we see that also as an opportunity to laterally hire officers from other departments?
We're constantly seeking certified officers because we're able to put them through the Fast Track Academy. Most police departments have an agreement that we're not going to poach from each other, but that doesn't mean that officers can't do that. So I can't go out and I'm reluctant to go out there and do a major campaign to try to take, officers from other departments. I'm not saying I won't do it, but I think through word of mouth and our officers' relationships with others, it's something that would definitely benefit the city and the police department.
Okay. Thank you. Related to other things you said, I really appreciate the work being done by the community engagement team. I think you've already seen just in a few months how it already was doing great work, but it's been improved. I think from my perspective, we deal with tremendous staffing issues, but a huge priority has to be trying to make sure that as many patrol officers as possible are able to spend part of their time doing that work, so that we're not just kind of limiting it to a certain number of officers.
Right now, and I agree with you. So ideally, you want 30 minutes out of the hour, for an average officer, 30 minutes out of the hour on reactive time, 30 minutes out of the hour on proactive time. The proactive time is engaging in those things that contribute to community policing, getting out of the car and interacting with people in a non-enforcement way. Unfortunately, right now in this police department, our officers are pretty much call-driven, and that's because of our staffing issues. They're going call to call to call, and they don't have as much time to engage in that type of proactive policing as we all want. So that's one of the reasons we continue to focus on hiring, recruiting, and retention. And so my hope is that we will get there sometime in the near future. But I agree with you.
Thank you. I think we're on the same page. And then finally, you touched on it briefly, but want to echo my colleagues' points about training. Can you just talk about kind of the training budget as a whole, and kind of, some of it is obviously the training bureau, some of it is outside training, kind of how is that broken down?
So this is a little bit more difficult because we do have our inside training bureau, and so the cost of those folks, their payroll and the materials they use and the building that we have there is all sort of incorporated into the regular general fund budget. So there's that. We do have approximately $150,000 total that's specifically in the budget for travel and training. Now, we batch that amount together in terms of budgeting because what we don't spend on travel or whatever for a course that's outside of Akron, then we can use that for another course that is local for tuition or the fees, registration fees, what have you. So that is a little bit separate. So we have that bucket of money that's in the general fund. In our case, it's important to note that approximately $82,000 this year is set aside for range fees. That's our rental fees to use the various ranges that we use around the area because we don't have our own. So we have to account for that. The rest of the money is used for training courses. We are fortunate to have a lot of courses that are offered locally that are not, there's no registration fee for those, or through OPATA that are not, there's no charge for those. And then additional money, we go to our equitable sharing fund, the seizure forfeiture money that we get from the state courts or from the state cases and federal cases. And we also go to issue 4 for some of that. Specifically, issue 4 money is usually targeted more toward our officers that work in the training academy because that is directly related to the training and academy project. So we pay for all our new hires through that project fund, and a part of it is training the trainers and getting them certified, and so that bucket of money is there. There are a couple other spots that we could probably reach to if we needed to, but those are the main ones.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the detailed information.
I'll come to Mr. Lombardo and then to Ms. Amobian.
Thank you. Chief Milet, you mentioned $100,000 in unclaimed funds returned. What did that mean?
So there are funds that were forfeited for different reasons and such, and Augie, I'm going to ask you to speak more intelligently about this.
All right, so the unclaimed funds, when we take money in, whether it's because somebody found it, I found $20, I'm giving it to the nice police officer because I don't know whose it is, to, in some cases, people that were arrested, and for whatever reason, what we did was we tagged their money for safekeeping while they might have went to the county or to the hospital or wherever they went. And in time that those funds added up, and we didn't have a means of really tracking those and figuring out who they belonged to. So we actually had someone assigned that's their job was to go through the property room book, page by page, case by case, verify whether, in the case that there was a criminal case, verify that the criminal case was over and what the conditions were, whether or not that those funds were to be returned to the owner. And through all this process, we were able to identify hundreds, I think, of people already that we've returned funds to. In some cases, it was returning funds to their families. Some of these were, frankly, quite old. There were a few that I saw come through that were in the early 2000s, and that we returned the funds. But we were able to return those funds. In some cases, people never asked for it. They just gave up, and they didn't know that all they had to do was come down and say, hey, you have my money. So we were able to return those funds. It's good to see that we're able to do that.
Some of those monies also included, to what I believe anyway, is that, you know, we may have identified a criminal enterprise where we seized monies that we believed were attributed to the criminal enterprise, but a court said no, and so we're giving that money back because the money doesn't belong to us. So it goes back to the individual who we thought was engaged in the criminal enterprise.
Oh, back to the individual. Okay.
We're not in the money-making business, and we want to hold on to people's money any longer than we have to.
I'll come to Ms. Amobian now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I only wanted to make the statement that the officer is correct. My agency actually is the host of the CIT training, and they're looking at ways to increase the number of training cycles they have. They really only have 1 or 2 a year, depending on staffing. But we are trying to find a way to increase the number of trainings. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I apologize for the length of my presentation. Over the last several months, a lot of things have been said about the police department and its officers and assumptions made. I felt that this was an opportunity for me to share a different part of the picture. And I think it's important that you all in the community know that you have an exceptional police department, in my humble opinion, Yes, we're always a learning organization, but day in, day out, the men and women of this police department, sworn and non-sworn, work very, very hard to serve the public. And I do think that they do overall a very, very successful job.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly, so thank you so much, and please, I thought your long presentation, you were bucking for overtime. I wasn't sure what it was. Chief, I hope you felt, welcome in Akron. You obviously came at a time where all of a sudden there was a lot of activity on you folks, but thank you for being here, and thank you. I hear so much good stuff from your officers, and thank you for being here. Please extend, however you do it through roll call or whatnot, that our deepest appreciation.
I will. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief. At this time, I've asked Chief Joe Natko to join us.
Welcome, Chief. There you go.
Thank you, Honorable Council. We appreciate you having us here to hear our presentation. We thank the Finance Department for their generosity and how they've dealt with some of our requests. So, I will give you some of our accomplishments for last year, and then I'll follow up with some of our goals for this year. Our run volume, as with the police department, has continued to increase. In the last 10 years, our fire run volume has gone up over 62%. Our EMS run volume has gone up over 47%. And we've done it with the same amount of stations and apparatus and basic personnel that we've always done it with. And we find ourselves at the breaking point right now. Our fire prevention program has been very active. They've been out there and accomplished over 5,000 inspections at city businesses throughout the city, and it has been very beneficial. It's kept that number of fire calls down where it could be greater. Our smoke alarm install program has put smoke alarms in over 600 homes in the city of Akron, and we do that through a generous grant that is managed by the Red Cross. Our CO detector program, last year we were able to secure over 513 CO detectors and install them in homes. That is also something that we rely on grants to secure those CO detectors, and we're actively working with organizations right now to secure some more so we can continue with that. Our recruitment effort was outstanding. We pushed hard and had a larger recruitment team than we've ever put out there before, and because of that, last February we gave a test and we had over 1,100 people apply, take the test. We had over 700 of those folks schedule a test date, and we're still waiting on the final numbers as far as how many people have tested and what the final count is and the demographics of that recruitment team. But we were ecstatic with that. Our goal with that is by the end of March to have a solid list that we can work from, and hopefully have a class in an academy late this fall, which would be late August, late summer, I guess, which would be late August or early September. And we will put on a bigger class than we've ever put on before. We're going to put on 36. We're going to put 36 in that class, and it will be difficult for us, but we recognize that we need these numbers. We need these numbers because of the increased run volume that we have seen and a change that's necessary in our operating model. And with that, I'm going to move into our goals for 2023. And one of those, foremost and most importantly to us, is a change in our operating model. We've operated with, last year we were approved for 371 staffing. And as with the police department, we reached that for a minute. And then through attrition, retirements, resignations and whatnot, that number dropped. We have 13 fire stations. And in each one of those stations, we have, at the very minimum, an ambulance and a fire engine. Some of those other fire stations have ladder trucks and specialty training vehicles as well. But our goal in each one of those stations is for that fire engine and that ladder truck and that ambulance to be able to stand alone and to respond to an incident. We can't do that today. In some of our stations, we can only put as many as 3 people. And if 3 people are in that station and they take a fire truck out, that ambulance sits there idle. It's not available for a call, or vice versa. If those 3 go on that ambulance, that fire truck sits there and it's idle. And it's been a difficult situation to deal with our increasing run volume. There'll be days when we have every ambulance committed to a call on the street, and we'll be down to no ambulances available. And we've been lucky, we've been fortunate, where someone's freed themselves up and has been able to respond to a call in all cases. If necessary, we will send a fire truck or a ladder truck out to assist somebody to be a first responder. Our goal, again, is to put every one of those vehicles as a standalone vehicle so they can respond better, so they can be available for the citizens. We know our run volume is not going to go down. We know it's going to continue to increase. We also are seeing a large burnout factor amongst our paramedics. They see a lot of ugly things, and we are at a minimum number of paramedics right now, where some days we question whether we have enough to run 13 ambulances. With that, the medics will be on that med unit day in and day out. They'll come in the next day and they'll see it again. And our hope is to get them somewhat of a rotation where they can rotate off of an ambulance and be strictly fire suppression for a day. Give them a break. It's not one day for one day. It may be 2-3 days on that ambulance and then get a day off and just be fire suppression in that station, just to give them a mental break. We've done this past year, 2022, with overtime, and that's not a healthy model. We don't want to do that. We did it because it was necessary, and we did overrun our overtime budget, and we apologize for that, but we were just trying to make things work. In 2023, when working with the finance department, we were able to increase our numbers up to 396 at the end of this year. But we won't be there until December, once our folks have been hired, been put through classes, and can then be put out working for us on the streets. So it's a lengthy process to do that, to hire, to do a background check, to put somebody through all the testing that's necessary to get them so they're on our payroll. Once they're on our payroll, we then would have to put them through school. We put them through fire school, we put them through EMT school, and then they're ready to start working for us. And that's not even talking about paramedic school. Paramedic school is another 10 to 11 months of intense schooling in one of the hospitals. We've accelerated our paramedic school enrollment in order to compensate for this burnout factor that our medics are seeing today. We have 30-some individuals that we're pushing hard to enroll in paramedic school at the next class, which starts in August. Again, it's a push. It's to enrich our numbers with the folks that we already have that need to be educated at the paramedic level. We don't know what the makeup of this next class that we hire will be. We won't know that until all the numbers are in and we're done interviewing and we see what we got. Our goal would naturally to be hire somebody who has all the training necessary, but that isn't always the case. An additional goal of mine is to put 3 more ambulances in service within the city of Akron. So that would give us 16 ambulances ready to respond throughout the city. We can do this with the additional staffing that we've worked out. A part of that is being able to secure 3 new ambulances and all the equipment that comes with that. That's at a healthy price tag. We've applied for a grant that will supply those ambulances and all the equipment that comes with those ambulances. A new ambulance today costs $250,000 with nothing on it. It's 2 years out to get one delivered. We never experienced that before, this recent crisis that we've seen with the supply chain being what it is. So these are some of our goals for this upcoming year, going into next year. We're aggressively pursuing it. I think we can do it. It's been complicated a bit by the fact that our private ambulance carrier within the city of Akron, which is AMR, has decided to not renew their contract with us come July 31st. They came to us several months ago and said our intent is not to renew the contract with us. The private ambulance carrier has always had a relationship with us. It's been a no-cost type of relationship where we didn't pay them anything. They never gave us any money. They simply funded themselves through the transport of our non-emergent patients. The way a non-emergent patient would look is on every EMS call, Akron Fire goes to that call. Our ambulance assesses the patient, stabilizes the patient, and if necessary, transports the patient. If it's not necessary, then we hand off that, we'll call in that private ambulance service and hand off that patient to them, and it frees our ambulance up for the next call that's right around the corner. AMR came to us and they wanted a stipend. Initially, they wanted $3 million a year in order to do business with us. We said that's not possible. What we did at that point in time was cast out through an RFP to see if anybody else was interested. Nothing feasible came back. AMR did come back to us with a 5-year proposal that said they would only charge us $2.1 million the first year, and then it would increase year by year after that, just totaling over $11 million in the 5-year contract. We said that's not feasible. We asked them back to the table again, said, is there anything we can do? And they said, shy of paying us, no. When we had that initial meeting with AMR, we felt we were being held hostage, and I think we truly were. So we decided at that point in time, we're going to absorb this service and we're going to do it ourselves. It will make for a healthier fire department, a happier citizen, and it is just a better service if we can do that. But to be able to do that, we have to increase our staffing, and that's our goal. So those are our goals for late this year, through the summer, moving out through late this year and into next year. And with that, I'll entertain questions.
I can see where we could really go, the information, we could go till 8 o'clock tonight very easily, okay, which we're not going to do, but who's Kamer, right? Public safety? Yeah, Mr. Kamer? Yeah. I mean, I hear things that, concern me, and it doesn't seem like three more ambulances cuts it. I could be wrong, but AMR did a lot for us throughout a year, didn't they?
AMR, in the transports that we would initiate every year, AMR transported about 29% of our run volume. We transported 21 to 25% of those patients, and they had available anywhere from 4 to 6 units a day. It would depend on their staffing and what time of day it was. During the evenings, they would cut way down. And even then, there was times when they were not able to respond. They were held up in the hospitals, their ambulances were engaged with us already, and we would absorb those hits at that time. We would make those non-emergent transports, no lights and sirens type of transport into the hospitals. So we think we can absorb it. This is going to be a trial and error type of thing, but we feel we can do it.
Mr. Fricker, when we're transporting, it's been so long since we talked about this, when we're transporting, if the individual has insurance,
Correct. So we have a billing company, and Chief Naka could probably explain this better than I can, but we do have a billing company called Life Force that will bill those insurance companies for that transport cost.
okay, so now the calls that AMR used to be picking up,
Correct. So there
Will
will be
the
some
income will come
additional
to us?
revenue that we will be able to bill for doing those transports.
okay.
Could I go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure.
So last year, we received just over $2.1 million in EMS billing for our transports. When part of the contract with AMR was that they gave us the figures that they collected as well. They collected over $3.1 million in billing. So that would be a potential for us to collect that same fee in our EMS billing. There's a lot of dynamics that go into play there. We don't collect deductibles from citizens. We only accept what insurance pays. AMR ran a different ship. They aggressively went after deductibles and whatever a patient would bill. Sometimes a patient would see a $1,500 bill from AMR, and we're nowhere near that. And in my mind, that's a poor service to a citizen of Akron. It really is. We pride ourselves on what we do, and we're not trying to get rich at it, and we certainly aren't getting rich at it, but it's just not a good look.
So keep in mind, there's a property tax millage that funds part of the EMS. It actually funds now really just about a third of it maybe. But, so that would be, we are taxing the property owners of Akron for this service.
So the additional, that essentially you'll be, the fire department will be contacting the insurance and saying, are those numbers in our budgets?
Yes, so we budgeted, we budgeted the $2 million that we've been collecting plus an additional $1.5 million that represents about a half a year of what AMR would have collected. So there's $3.5 million budgeted for those billings.
Say what?
Is there any more room in the inside millage, or are we maxed?
No, the inside millage is at 10.5. That is the charter limit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I'll come to, you two know who had the first hand up, so was it you, Shamus, or? Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief. Certainly a sobering presentation, right? And I appreciate the gravity of the work that Akron Fire does every day and the gravity of the challenges facing the department. I guess, obviously we could be here for a long time talking about AMR. I guess, just kind of generally, how many runs would they do a day?
So I can give you a year figure.
Sure.
So AMR last year, AMR transported 12,399 of our patients. Akron Fire transported 9,149. So you're looking at roughly, a 23 to 24,000 patient transport service that we would be providing now, when AMR's contract is done.
And that's where I was going next, right? Which is, these are less emergency calls, right? Is there a situation in which there's a call that AMR would transport for in 2022 that we would not transport for in 2024?
There is that possibility. We're exploring, we've been working with a program called telehealth, and we're trying to make that grow. It's very difficult because the hospitals haven't all bought in yet, but with the goal of a telehealth call is our folks go out, our ambulance and our paramedics go out, and they open up a telehealth transaction between the hospital and the patient. And we navigate that, and we try and do something that's called a treat in place, where we treat them, we leave them in their home, and it works out okay. It's a struggle right now, honestly. It's a struggle with getting compliance from all the hospitals. Right now, Akron General is the only hospital that's partnering with us on that. We hope to get SUMA as well as Children's Hospital on board with it as well. It was a trial program, and it's working. We'd like it to work better.
Absolutely, and I appreciate, I appreciate that, and I want to learn more, right? I feel like there's just a lot here.
There is.
But I would say, and this is just kind of my gut reaction, is that, as someone who has followed a family member to the hospital in an ambulance that was not an emergency call, right, they all feel like emergency calls.
Yes.
And I know you know that, right? But I think that's just my gut reaction.
We very much appreciate what the public feels when we do that. I know if it was my family member, I wouldn't want that family member turned over to a private ambulance service. I'd want them to go in the back of one of our apparatus, even if it's with no lights and sirens, still going in. And there are medical calls that are like that. They need to go into the hospital, they need a paramedic in attendance, but they don't need lights and sirens. A light and sirens transport is something we've always traditionally done. That's a life or limb threatening issue. But there are other emergency medical calls that don't require that level of transport. So, and we're very conservative when taking people to the hospital. We want them to go because the patient that's not transported is a liability factor for us. Something can occur and happen right around the corner where we missed something, we didn't see something, and next thing you know, something bad happens and we're facing it in a different level then.
Ms. Holland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Chief. I appreciate everything the department does so much. And I was actually going to ask you about telehealth, where we were with this. Medical access is, maybe the most pressing issue of our time. And the reality is, you guys are frequently access point, right, for medical care. You have somebody who calls who is either critically ill because they have not received routine care, or they are not critically ill, but this is their way to get care. And so telehealth seems like a great idea and a great investment, and I heard you when you said there is one major medical center in the area that's already in, and I think it's fair to say that City Council would be interested in helping any way we can to push this along. This is how we change the world. We open this up. This is also how we free you up for fires and for true life or death emergencies. Telehealth is the way of the future. Now, the other thing that I wanted to ask you about, I had an inquiry about this a while ago, and that is the ability of people to pay, whether it's AMR or the City of Akron's charges for ambulance transport, to pay online or by credit card. Where are we with that?
Our billing company, we rarely get directly involved with that billing aspect of it, but our billing company is very receptive to any electronic transactions because it stops that whole paper thing, sending a bill in, sending a check back in. It's very difficult.
I think we end up leaving a lot of money on the table in a variety of industries where we don't have that easy online payment. And the story that is in my head as I'm talking to you about this is literally about somebody who ended up with an ambulance charge in collection. And of course, medical debt relief is very much on my mind right now, but not an uncommon story. Something goes into collection because the person literally does not have a checkbook, right?
Right.
So I think worth looking at, and I really appreciate all that you're doing to look at ways to reduce costs and keep some of this money. Really smart. I think AMR just showed itself the door. Thank you.
Thank you.
Probably a few council members here are thinking, I need to start an ambulance company. Any other questions or comments? We're rapidly approaching the 6 o'clock hour. Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you.
However you extend our appreciation to your staff and crew, please do that.
I sure will. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I just want to take a second and say thank you to our finance department. They spent countless numbers of hours helping us get this prepared, and I have no idea where we would be if you had not spent this much time with us, so thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we all ride on the shoulders of people that do their jobs well, don't we?
Yeah, well, we appreciate the relationship. We work through a variety of numbers. I know we've talked a lot about the overtime. As Chief Nacco just said, we're getting something for our money. So we did have overtime last year, but what we got was those stations trying to operate the way they're intended to operate, which is independent fire and EMS units. So that's what we were trying to accomplish, and that's what that overtime paid for.
Very good. I think that's it for us, isn't it? And we will begin tomorrow evening with, or tomorrow afternoon with council, with legislative. Okay, very good. So we are adjourned at, let me see my Apple Watch, 5:54. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your afternoon. Thanks.